This episode of Brains on Games is a preview of a deck building game about fighting monsters. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode we are going to talk about a game that's going to be coming to crowdfunding very soon, a game that was sent to me by its designer, a first-time designer named Peter Yang, and it's a game called Final Strike. This game is in such a development stage. I don't even have a box to show you, but hopefully I'll have some graphics that I can put up on the screen so you can get an idea about what this game is all about. Final Strike is a game for between 2 and 4 players, and in a 4-player game, you're playing 2 teams of 2. It's a game that works, well, the designer says age 6 and up. I think maybe 8 and up might be a good age range for this game, and you can play a game in half an hour to 60 minutes. Let's take a deeper look at Final Strike. Final Strike is a light deck building game where what you're trying to do is earn the most glory, and you earn glory by damaging monsters and often, especially by defeating those monsters, being the one who gets the final strike, which is why the game is called that. You're going to be playing using this set of cards this makes up the marketplace. Really, it's called the smithy, but this is where you're going to be pulling cards in to craft your deck. And there are a lot of cards. You see me holding this giant stack. There are a lot of cards you're not going to use in a game. So Final Strike is a game that right now they're sort of working out and balancing different scenarios where you have different combinations of weapons and potions in the smithy that will allow different combos of card plays when you're getting down into the game. So it's a game that's still in development, and artwork might change. Definitely there's some additional cards I know that they're thinking about, and I've read even that they're considering whether they'll have asymmetric powers for the players. But as it stands right now, it is a very straightforward deck building game. You're going to start your game with a few cards. Now, I will say the cards here in the prototype are very shiny, so I'm trying something new with the lighting because otherwise all you're going to see is reflections of my lights on these things. So hopefully it's bright enough that you can see, but you're going to start the game with a set of several cards. You're going to have 4 of these magic hammers, you're going to have 4 short swords, and you'll have 3 of these pikes. Now, up here at the top is the damage that the weapon will do to the creature, and sometimes down at the bottom there's some special ability. Now, the magic hammer is a special card because what that will allow you to do is to take a card from your discard pile, take it out of the game, and then you're forging that card into hopefully a more powerful card that's going to be more useful to you in your deck. Now, with most deck builders that I've played, you earn money through your card draws and you spend that money to get more powerful cards into your deck. It's not a money thing in this game. It's really the positions of the cards. So you've got these 3 rows here. The bronze weapons are not very powerful. Then you get more powerful abilities at the silver level. And then the gold ones, of course, are going to be the most powerful in the game that will allow you to have more options when you play them. But you're not spending money on these things. Instead, like I said, you're using the hammer to do 1 damage to the creature, and then you're taking a card from the discard pile, and all of those hammers have some little joystick picture here down at the bottom that shows, well, if I discard this short sword, I can take a card from anywhere, 1 above or 1 to the left or 1 to the right of that card that I'm discarding. So what we were trying to do as we played the game is maybe we discard a pike to get one of these spears, and then we could discard this one to get one up at the top. So you're gradually kind of getting things into your discard pile that are going to allow you to gather more and more powerful cards to damage these monsters. The hammers are all about getting cards into your deck that are going to give you more flexibility or more powers or allow you to gain more glory in the game. The game is played over 3 rounds, and each round the players are going to be fighting against monsters, a boss monster that will increase in power with each round. So the first round you're going to have a weaker monster, but as your decks get stronger, the monsters are also going to get stronger. Now the monsters don't damage the players, so that means none of the players are going to get knocked out of the game. Their decks just keep getting more powerful, and they'll have more and more options or be able to do more and more damage potentially to this creature. So this is a third act monster, and if you defeat this monster, you're going to get a huge bonus at the end of 7 glory, and you win the game by having the most glory after those 3 acts. So you're going to have a 5-card hand. You start the game with a 5-card hand. You're going to play 1 card. Sometimes that will cause you to discard some other cards. The short sword, for example, allows you to discard a card from your hand if you play it. And then at the end of your turn, you draw back up to that full 5 cards. If your deck runs out, you shuffle up the discard pile. And sometimes there are some cards that will do damage to a monster as they're shuffled back into the deck for you to draw from. The cubes, the red cubes, represent blood, and blood is another way that you're going to earn some glory at the end of each round. So this is a creature that has 40 hit points. You've got some dividers here that show that something's going to happen once a certain amount of damage is done. The little orange cubes represent 5 blood. I was running out of the red ones. I have more piled over on my game table on the other side of the room. So I didn't have enough red ones to represent all of this monster's hit points. And then, like I said, players are going to be playing a card, doing some damage, and then taking advantage of whatever ability that card might have. So in the case of the Molten Edge, you also get to, after you've played the card, you'll do 4 damage to this boss monster, and then if there are other minions on the table, you can also spread out some damage among those other minions. So if I had played this Molten Edge, I'm going to do 4 damage. That means I'm going to take 4 of these cubes, and they're going to go right in front of me as the player. This is blood that I'm earning by damaging the monster, and then at the end of the round, when a monster is defeated, you wash off the blood, and for each 4 blood that you have that you wash off, you get 1 glory point, and that's rounded down. So if you have 3 extra at the end, you don't round up to get that extra glory. Those 3 extra blood don't do anything for you at all. Eventually, you're going to have damaged the monster. The monster will have summoned some minions, so you have a number of different cards on the table where you can spread your damage around. If you damage one of these vine elementals, you take a card from your discard pile and you shuffle it back into your deck. Now, some of the cards give you an ability if you shuffle them back, or do some damage if you shuffle them into your deck. So it might look something like this. Now you'll gain a glory for defeating one of these minions. So if I do 3 damage to this one, I'm going to get those 3 blood and I'll gain 1 glory point. Plus I have to take a card from my discard pile and shuffle it back into my deck. What I'm trying to do is make sure that I do some damage that will earn me some glory, but that I'm not leaving things in such a way that it's going to allow my opponent to get, say, these 7 extra points. This one is huge. And if the monster is defeated, that's the end of the round. So even if there are minions left, nothing's going to happen with those minions. The round is over and you start counting up the glory points based on how much damage you did to the creature. As a result, this becomes a game that's really about timing. Sometimes you're going to want to do a lot of damage. At the beginning of the game, we were hitting this monster as hard as we could. Sometimes you want to hold back, maybe either to upgrade your deck or to make sure that you don't leave things in a way that's going to allow your opponent to gain a whole bunch of glory by defeating the monster. This is why it's called Final Strike. That Final Strike is going to gain you 7 points when you defeat this monster. In one of the best games that we played, we ended up on the last turn with a situation that looked something like this. So we had the boss here who had 5 points left, and this temple vault, which started with 8 hit points, was down to 1. And of course, with your attack, unless you have some special ability on your card, you're playing 1 card is going to damage one of these things. I was 4 points ahead at this point of the game. I had done a little bit more damage than my son had, so I was a little bit ahead. But we wound up with this setup where it was my turn, and if you notice from the smithy, the highest damage cards are going to do 4 damage. So this thing has 5 hit points left on it, so there was no way, without some special power, there was no way that I could kill the monster. He had manipulated me into getting things down to this level, and so he figured, I'm either going to gain 7 glory for this, and this one would be left for him to do something about. He had some cards in his hand that was going to allow him to do some extra damage. In fact, he told me after the game he had cards in his hand that would allow him to defeat both of these, get the damage plus the 14 glory, and he would have won the game. But this was how it looked at the beginning of my turn. And so I did play a card that managed to do 4 damage to the creature, and that left it with 1. But that was also my last card. So I wound up having to shuffle my discard pile, and I happen to have the sword that does 1 damage when it's shuffled back into the deck from the discard. So that allowed me to do that 1 more damage. I managed to get 5 points in blood from this monster, and then I got the 7 glory at the end. That ended the turn. My son didn't get another turn to get the 7 glory from the vault because the monster was dead. So it was a tense turn where it could have gone either way at the end of the game. So we certainly enjoyed doing that math at the end, but you're really, really trying to set things up so that your opponent is forced to do some damage that will allow you to give the final strike that's going to give you some extra bonuses. You're really choosing between doing big damage versus doing a little bit and forcing your opponent to do something that's going to give you more points later on. It does make it a game that's, I think, we've only played it at the 2-player count. I figured this is a game that's going to be more strategic at 2 players or at the 4 players, where you've got 2 teams of 2. With 3 players, it's hard to set things up where you're going to be able to earn some points. You can mess up the turn for the player to your left, but then the player on the other side of that player is going to be able to get the points for the kill at the end. So I think at 2 or at 4, you can be more strategic in your choices and give your teammate or yourself some options in terms of earning some points when their turn comes around. So we had in that game, like I was explaining to you, we had a very exciting, tense final turn where the game could have gone either way. I needed to play one certain card that would allow me to defeat the monster and stop my son from winning. And if I wasn't able to do that, he was definitely going to win. And that is a question that I have for you this episode. Do you have a favorite final strike or final turn story about a tense game that just where something exciting really happened at the very end of a game that you were playing? I'd love to hear about it. And if you've got a good final strike story, you can leave it in the comment section below the video. But what skills are you working on when you're playing this kind of a deck construction game where you're really trying to budget out the amount of damage you do and manage your hand and manage your deck to make sure that you're going to maximize the number of points? Well, whenever you're budgeting and planning ahead, and I think in this case, it's a good game for trying to kind of resist the urge to just do the maximum damage each time, because it is all about the timing of that damage. When you're budgeting, when you're resisting those impulses, response inhibition, that's called, when you're planning ahead, those are all good examples of executive functioning skills, the skills that you need to work towards a goal. And this game does exercise and require that ability. There's also, a little bit of a mental math component, because not only am I trying to make sure that I'm doing some damage and earning some points, and then I'm counting by 4s at the end to figure out how much glory I've earned at the end of each round, but I'm also trying to calculate things so that I leave enough hit points or blood on that monster so that the next player isn't going to be the one who earns a bunch of extra points for defeating it. So there is a little bit of mental math. I'd say even there's a memory component too, because if I keep track sort of what cards my opponent has played and what cards they've bought or forged to put into their deck, that's going to give me an idea. Like, are they likely to have a card that can do 4 damage, or have they played all of their high damage cards and now they might only be able to do 3? It might be risky to take a chance and leave 4 hit points on a monster when there are cards that can do 4 damage. But if I sort of know what's been played and I'm able to keep track of my opponent's cards in a 2-player game, that's much easier than if you're playing in a 4-player game. There's more people to keep track of maybe, but you are doing some memory work there as well. Now, it's hard for me to say what are my final thoughts about this game, because this is a prototype and it's very much, I think there's still some parts that are still in flux. The rule book is still being tweaked as we speak, I think, even right now. So we'll call this first impressions rather than final thoughts. This is a game where I think that there is a lot of potential for fun combos of card plays and like I said, we had that really exciting turn at the end of one of the games that we played with my son. So there's a real potential for different combos depending on how that smithy is set up. Now, I don't have every single card that's going to be in the final game, and I just tried a few different setups, so I haven't tried every possible combination and how those things work together. So I think it would be fun once you get going to kind of set up the smithy in a way that you can do some exciting things as your deck builds up. I do like the 8-bit art style. It reminds me a little bit, maybe 16-bit on the monsters. They're a little bit higher resolution, but it did remind me a little bit of those old video games or card games like Boss Monster. That's probably the most similar one artistically, I think, to this one. I do think it is kind of silly and fun to say that you're washing off blood at the end of the round, and that's how you're earning your glory, by how much blood you're covered in, how much damage you've done. But the way the rule book terms it is that you're washing off the blood at the end of the round. So we thought that was kind of a funny image, that you're earning glory by doing that. So it's a little silly too. It's got kind of a light art style, and it's light in terms of its complexity, but this is a simple deck builder that I think has some potential for some cool combos. If there's a downside, right now I feel like a 3-player game is going to provide fewer opportunities to really calculate out and be strategic in your turn. It's going to randomize things a little bit more because you've got 2 players in between your next turn. So when it's a duel or you're playing in teams, it is a bit easier to set things up. But I think in a 3-player game, that's going to be a bit, it's not to say it wouldn't be fun to play it that way, but it's certainly, I think, less strategic and more randomness is going to come into the game when it's played with 3 players as opposed to 2 or 4. So those are first impressions of my sneak peek of Final Strike. Thanks so much to Peter Yang for sending this game my way. If you have any questions or comments, if you want to share your final turn, your Final Strike story in the comment section below, you can leave all of those things in the comment section below, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website where future episodes will go, and the previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.